Okay, so welcome everyone to Lessons from the Field. This is, as you know, this is a series of interviews that we do with a diverse array of guests, all whom have a common thread, and that's a passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. Today, we're really fortunate to have Mehul Dalal here with us. Mehul is a graduate of both our master's and PhD programs in the Department of Pharmacy Systems, Outcomes, and Policy. Mehul is head of hematology and senior director for global outcomes research at Takeda Oncology. And Mehul, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I really look forward to talking to you again. And as usual, we're going to ask Mehul a series of questions, and I know we'll gain some very valuable insight for our students and alumni and friends who might be listening. So Dr. Dalal, if you could just start by walking us through kind of your career in a brief 3 minutes or so, like what you've done since you left UIC.
So as you mentioned, I graduated from the Department of then Pharmacy Administration in 2004, 2005. And then after that, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry, working in different capacities. I started my career with GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, where I worked mainly as a health outcomes scientist for around 4 years, wherein I supported health outcome strategy and tactical implementations in cardiovascular products mainly for around 4 years until 2008. After that, I was looking for more diverse experience, so I ended up then moving on to Sanofi. It was Sanofi Aventis then in late 2008, I believe so, wherein I started working from mainly from a US market perspective. My role at GSK was more global, but at Sanofi it was more US centric, working with the US organization within the company, US payers, etc. Just trying to get the health outcomes messages out for the products I worked on, mainly in diabetes. I worked a lot in diabetes during my time there. I spent around a good 6-7 years at Sanofi before this opportunity in oncology that came up for Takeda in Boston, wherein I am right now. I started at Takeda in late 2015, starting with one product, but now I have up to 4 products that I oversee. And I also manage all the marketed hematology products within oncology, again, from a health outcomes research perspective.
Mm-hmm. Great. And how many people do you have reporting or working with you, Mehul?
Right now, I have 4 people that are reporting into me. Again, they are all representing different assets that I have to oversee.
Yeah, wow. You know, I think one of the things that our students and others who listen are really interested in is a little more detail on like the day-to-day activities that you're involved in. So maybe you could just kind of walk us through what are the things that what is the job involved on kind of daily or a typical week?
Yeah, sure. I think over the 7 years, the day has changed quite a bit. So right now, again, because we are still in the hybrid situation, a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of Microsoft Teams meetings, I would definitely say. Any role in pharmaceutical industry will involve a lot of meetings. But the best part is that it's not one-on-one meetings. Usually, it is usually matrix meetings, because we have folks from different functions within the group, within R&D, within commercial, within market access, who sit together to discuss the common issues and the strategies that we have to work on. And this could be mainly not only in a launch of a new asset or commercialization of an asset, or even how about trying to come up with what is needed for this asset in terms of generating evidence. Because I'm in an outcomes research role, a lot of my priorities and focus lie on working on developing, on generating evidence. And this evidence could be mainly from clinical trials, could be from real world data, observational studies. So those are the kind of pieces that we look into. We do a lot of comparative effectiveness studies using existing data sources or even de novo projects from chart reviews. So again, it requires a lot of meeting, not only with internal folks, but also we usually work with CROs or contract research organizations or vendors that help us with not only designing the study, but also implementing it. Some part of my day also involves, or a lot of my day also involves reviewing stuff. Like we not only review our own projects that we are working on, but because we are considered a main function within the R&D organization, we have to review things from, say, clinical operations, the clinical sciences, which are actually the main clinical scientists who are working on clinical studies. Also, because we are involved in developing dossiers, not only for regulatory submissions, but also for reimbursement submissions, we are involved in reviewing of those, providing our comments so that it aligns overall with the submission strategy, so to speak. As I'm also a manager, I do have one-on-ones with my team, wherein we talk about not only what are the updates on the projects or studies that they are working on, but also something that is very important, that is personal and career development. Like it is something that as a manager we need to keep an eye on, especially in this COVID times where we have staff joining new who have not got a chance to come to the office. So to keep them happy, to keep them feel at ease that, okay, there are other people that are in the group that you should liaise with, it behooves on us to make sure that they feel at home, even if they haven't met anybody in person. So I think those one-on-one interactions are quite paramount in these situations, especially to keep the morale high. And when you're not getting the typical water cooler engagements that you typically used to have, where you learn not only about your own group, but overall company as a whole. So those kinds of like again on a day-to-day basis, these activities do change depending on
Yeah.
typical product requirements or what the needs are or what fire drills we have. Again, we do have fire drills, a lot of them, because again, we are a company where we need to submit data if FDA comes or the EMA comes and asks us for additional information, or if a particular reimbursement agency requires certain evidence, and we need to again, we like to pick out evidence from our hats if we have some. Otherwise we have to go and work on planning and designing a study to get that required evidence.
Wow, it's great to listen to you describe your what you do. I'm sure it's also very informative for the folks listening. But as you were talking, I was thinking back. I mean, it was 20 years ago you were a student here. I remember you, you know, as a faculty member at the time, and just to see how far you've come, it's great to hear you talk about what you're doing now. And I guess a question for you, you know, given that you're in a leadership position, you know, in a top international company, are there things that you wish you would have learned earlier, whether it's leadership skills or others, really, either when you were here in the program or earlier in your career, that might be good for folks to hear and maybe help them as they prepare, you know, to follow a career similar to yours?
Definitely. I think something that I learned, again, this is after reflecting on what I used to be when I was in school. I would have definitely done much better if I was more assertive then, because sometimes when you are in a graduate school, you take it as easy as it can be. But again, given how things have changed in the recent times, I think being more assertive, being proactive, definitely would have helped because, and that's again some of the advice that I have, that never miss a chance to collaborate or interact with people whom you consider as some kind of role models or in some and some or in whose shoes you want to be in the future. So definitely don't miss those kinds of opportunities. Like
Mm.
I would have I would have done better for myself if I was a little less lazy when I was in grad school, because this all goes towards again, hindsight is 2020 in retrospect, but definitely we want to make sure that you always be on the lookout for opportunities, so to speak. I know with the expanding healthcare arena, definitely there are a lot more opportunities than what it used to be. Again, given how the healthcare environment has changed, so definitely those are the opportunities that really help you hone your leadership skills in
Yeah.
one or the other.
Well, we're all our own worst critics, so I'm sure I'm sure you're being hard on yourself, but because I don't remember you being lazy or anything like that. But while we're talking about it, though, as you kind of reflect back on your 20-year experience in industry, how have you? What are advice or tips you might give people for staying current and kind of on top of your game? You've obviously progressed, in higher and higher positions with each move that you've made, but how have you expanded your knowledge or experience or expertise to stay relevant and kind of competitive in the field?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's not just one thing that covers all that. So there are multiple approaches that one would consider. Like I definitely subscribe to a lot of those new services just in the healthcare. So I'm aware of what's happening because I work in the pharmaceutical industry and in oncology. So I try to keep a pace with what's happening with newer therapies, what's happening with other companies, just by going into something like Fierce Pharma or Endpoints. You have all these services now, which provide you a lot of information that traditionally you wouldn't have looked into. And I think as you grow up on the leadership ladder, something that you need to learn is the big picture. And that's why I started reading more of like the business side of things, because sometimes when you're doing research, which my role is currently still doing research, sometimes you need to have that business focus or the business impact of what you are doing. So you always look into those kinds of what does the company annual reports say, what they are focusing on. All this helps you at least get a big picture from your from big picture, so that you know that how you are impacting things. Because sometimes if you say I'm doing a real world study, I have got the data, but I don't know exactly what impact it has. It does have an impact somehow, but you need to get some idea of the big picture. And that's why I try to talk with folks who are not in my department, who are in like the commercial field, access field, just to get a better sense of what we are doing. Is it making any kind of a dent? And you need to keep that in perspective, because sometimes we do like things which we are supposed to do, but unless you get a good insight into what's the business impact or what's the patient impact. I think right now the main thing is what's the patient impact. It's something that you need to keep in mind. We do attend congresses a lot, and again, congresses are definitely one arena where we attend different sessions just to keep ourselves updated with what's going on
Mhm.
with competitors, as well as where the science is moving. I'll agree that sometimes those sessions are way too high for me to follow, but at least even if you get like 5 minutes of a 1 hour discussion, your day is done, because again, that 5 minutes of lesson that you have learned is better than not learning anything. So that's why I try to attend whenever I can all these sessions, or now we have a lot of webinars from FDA, webinars from different vendors, just to keep yourself more in tune with what the jargon is. I think the main thing is that with new technologies, we have new jargons in the healthcare arena, and sometimes you need to be open to learning about those, even if it's remotely associated with what you do. So again, I'm giving a hodgepodge of different ways
Yeah,
I approached it. But again, it's not one thing. You've got to be open to a lot of different things
yeah,
as
yeah.
you.
That's great. I guess I'm trying to formulate this question a little bit better, but um, kind of what keeps you going? Or what makes you proud about the work that you do? Or is there anything that has really surprised you in your career so far?
Yeah, so and again, something that surprised me and that what keeps me ticking, so to speak, is that uh, we we do realize we do see sometimes the direct patient impact. Although we do research and we are not always talking with patients directly, we do a lot of real world studies. We do a lot of patient reported outcomes based studies, but sometimes we don't get to see the direct patient impact. I think that was a surprising moment for me that I've over the years I worked on a lot of things, but not each time or not we don't get a lot of opportunities to bring it directly to patients. And at Takeda, at least in my current job, I got a couple of those opportunities, which I'm really thankful for, because there was this access to medicine program where in Takeda, where I worked with cancer centers in Kenya and Tanzania, where I actually went there to help build capacity building in their cancer clinics, and we could directly see the impact of it on patient care and outcomes. And so those are the kind of things that it's not to making sure that your product is launched and is now a blockbuster, but sometimes these are this soft things that you see that because you created this data collection form in the clinic, it has helped that particular clinic in Tanzania to provide better care for the cancer patients. I think those kinds of things, more of a process kind of thing that we worked on, has a lot more impact on patients than sometimes launching of drugs. So those are the kind of things that keeps me ticking. And the surprise and the question that you asked about what surprises me is that sometimes we don't do that enough. And because a lot of the work we do is patient centric, but sometimes it's not always that we make that connection directly with patients.
I
So,
see.
so again, so we are trying also to whatever we do, somehow bring it to patients in either a lay summary or work with a patient advocacy group to bring that data to patients through them. Of course, given that we are a highly scrutinized organization, we cannot always, not all functions can work directly with patients, but through an patient advocacy group, we can definitely bring that out. And hopefully that is something that we should keep doing more and more going forward.
Yeah. Well, that's very helpful, Mehul. Um, I'm interested in, a lot of our students are interested in careers in outcomes research and pharmacoeconomics and pharmaceutical industry for sure, whether they're in our PharmD program or, as you know, in our graduate programs, both in pharmaceutical sciences and in pharmacy systems, outcomes, and policy. So I guess for a student at any one of those stages of their education, do you have more specific advice for them on pursuing a career like yours, whether it's specifically in outcomes or more generally in the industry?
Yeah, I think I can just share what I think someone could do. Again, it's not, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say, please follow my footsteps. I don't want to be that prescriptive. I think the, at least in graduate school or even in family programs, you have a lot of internships within the pharma industry, or even sometimes you have those non-paying internships or fellowships, and I think those are really good opportunities because you would be surprised that when we are in graduate school, we have little knowledge of how the industry works or how the different teams in the pharmaceutical industry works. So if you want to think of your career in a pharmaceutical industry, it's good to understand some dynamics of how it works, like what are the different functions, how they interact with each other, like what are the different stages that they interact. A lot of this you learn at your job, but then some kind of exposure to that is really would be really beneficial, because there's not just one job for a PharmD student or a graduate from the PSOP program to be in pharma. There are so many different opportunities, right from medical communications, outcomes research that I do, market access, and health policy. Like you won't believe we have a big health policy group of part of that team sits in Washington. And again, whatever we learn as part of our health policy education or overall pharmaceutical education goes a long way in understanding what we need to work on from a policy perspective. So I think there is a lot of different activities within a pharmaceutical industry that lends itself depending on your interest. So definitely try to get some kind of exposure, even if it's by chatting with alumni or chatting with vendors or chatting with your friends, because those are the way those are one that is one way for you to kind of get a good perspective. We just sometimes when we are in graduate school, we just see the glittery of the pharmaceutical industry, but it's just not that. There is a lot of hard work that goes inside it as well, which we need to be aware of. Because again, you may join the industry in one particular role, but you'll be surprised that a lot of folks do change their paths. Like I stayed in the outcome research role, but there are a lot of different avenues that you can pursue. You could become an expert in, say, PROs or patient-reported outcomes. You could become expert in health policy, uh, clinical pathways. So a lot of things are there. So again, and that is another surprising part, that when I was in grad school, we had only specific roles that we could think of. But now, in 2022, if you look at it, even a graduate from the pharmaceutical systems and health policy program can make themselves avail for a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was excellent. Thanks for all the advice you've given here. But is there any additional comments you'd like to make? Advice for our students, or anything as you reflect back on your time at UIC? I know you've already mentioned, taking advantage of opportunities, internships, or ways of connecting with folks in the field that you're interested in. But any other advice for our students?
Yeah, I think one thing that you have to embrace is change. That is something that we all need to work on. Again, changes always are not good. So, but you have to go with the mindset that you have to embrace it, because it is inevitable. For example, we just know how the world changed with COVID. Of course, we are glad that we still have a job, etc., and things are going through this remote working, etc. But again, in the industry, at least the industry that I work in, change happens more frequently than you can think of. And again, changes can be what you work on, what your manager is, how the department just changes or morphs into. So all of those things are quite regular, because it's a very demanding industry, and to adapt to what is required from a regulatory perspective, from a reimbursement perspective, you have to adapt, and to do the adaptations, you have to change not only the way we work, but sometimes also you change your mindset, because things that I learned in, say, Sanofi may not be applicable at Takeda, the group is different, the people are different, so
Mm.
you have to change yourself. Again, we can sit on our laurels, but sometimes you just need to make those changes, minor or major, just so that you reach your own goals as well as the company goals.
Yeah, well, that's very sage advice. Well, thank you for all of your advice and comments. This has been really fantastic. It's great to spend a little bit of time with you again after quite a while. Good to see you
Yeah,
doing so well. We're obviously very proud of you. Um, hopefully we'll have students interested in following in your footsteps and maybe even want to give you a ring or email and get some advice directly from you. So thanks,
sure,
Mehul. Thank you very
sure.
much.
Thank you, Glenn.